Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. And today I'm going to discuss a new movie, and the movie name is Just Go With It. And this movie made in 2011, and let's start the review of this movie. Okay, Just Go With It, and genre romantic comedy, director Dennis Dugan, and main cast Adam Sandler, Jennifer Aniston, Nicole Kidman, Brooklyn Decker. Full scene by scene detail summaries here. So let's start. Opening the wedding disaster. The film opened in 1988 with Danny McCabe, Adam Sandler. On his wedding day, he overhauls his fiancée, confessing she is only marrying him for his future success as a plastic surgeon. Heartbroken, he still goes through the ceremony but feels emotionally crushed. At the wedding reception, he meets a random woman at a bar wearing his wedding ring, and he pretends to be trapped in a miserable marriage, and the woman sympathizes and sleeps with him. This becomes his lifelong trick. Danny realizes that pretending to be unhappily married makes women more interested and lower expectations. 20 years later, the fake wedding ring game. Dan is now wealthy, successful plastic surgeon, Los Angeles. He constantly wears a fake wedding ring to attract women with sympathy. His loyal assistant, Katharina Murphy, Jennifer Aniston, is a single mom with two kids, and Maggie, smart, dramatic, Michael, Simin, and hilarious. Danny's latest fling is with young, beautiful school teacher Palmer Drongley, Brooklyn Decker. One night, Palmer finds Danny's wedding ring in his pocket, and she feels betrayal and refuses to continue unless she meets his wife. The big lie begins. To keep Palmer, Danny panics and invents a fake wife. He convinces Catherine to pretend to be his soon-to-be ex-wife. At first, he refuses, but Danny bribes her with a luxurious trip to Hawaii, financial help, and they meet Palmer at a fancy restaurant. Katerina invents a dramatic fake divorce story. She cheated on Danny with a man named Duff Landgren, and Palmer feels sympathy and agrees to continue seeing Danny, but now she wants to meet the kids too. And kids enter the chaos. Katerina kids get involved in the lie. Michael demands money to keep quiet. When Palmer overhears something, Michael improvises and says he needs Danny to take them to Hawaii to reunite the family before the divorce. Now Danny has no choice. Everyone must go to Hawaii, and Danny, Catherine, Palmer, the two kids. Hawaii lies get bigger. In Hawaii, the fake family dynamic continues. Danny struggles to balance impressing Palmer, maintaining the fake marriage story, and handling Catherine's increasing irritations. Slowly, we see something. We see something important. Danny and Catherine have natural chemistry. They argue comfortably. They laugh easily. And Palmer, meanwhile, seems shallow and overly impressed by money and looks. And the old rival appears. They run into Catherine's old college rival Javelin Adams and Nicole Kidman. Years ago, Devlin bullied Catherine for her looks, and now Devlin is married to a wealthy man and appears perfect. Devlin suspects the story doesn't add up to complete. Catherine lies and that Danny is her husband and a big plastic surgeon. And now the lie expands further. They must attend dinner at Cavlin House as a married couple. Dinner from hell at Devlin mentions Devlin brags constantly. Catherine is pretends to be glamorous and successful. Danny plays along. Devlin challenges Catherine's lies, and in a hilarious twist, Devlin's husband ends up being secretly gay and attracted to Danny, and the dinner becomes chaotic and humiliating. Catherine wins a small emotional victory, proving she is not the insecure girl anymore. Emotional shift, real feelings surface. Meanwhile, Danny begins noticing Palmer lacks depth, and Catherine understands him, and the kids treat him like family. And one quiet beat scene shows Danny and Catherine is talking honestly, and for the first time, lies stop. Just two adults connecting. You feel the emotional turn, and Danny processes to the wrong woman, and Danny processes to Palmer on the beach. Palmer says yes, and but Catherine is clearly heartbroken. Realizations. Danny slowly realizes he doesn't truly love Palmer, he loves Catherine. He wants a real family, not a fantasy. He breaks up Palmer, the real ending, and Danny confesses his feelings to Catherine. She resists at first, afraid, and he is just confused too, but Danny provides he is serious. Without lies, proposes genuinely. Catherine says yes, and the movie ends with their wedding. This time, honest, simple, and sincere. Even the kids are happy. Character arcs. Danny starts as emotionally wounded and manipulative, uses lies to avoid vulnerability, learns that the real love requires honesty. Catherine starts insecure and sarcastic, gains confidence, and finally chooses for who she truly is. Palmer represents fantasy and surface attractions, not emotionally deep enough for Danny's growth. Core themes: love versus lust, lies versus honesty, and family as emotional healings, growing beyond past trauma. Tone and style: typical Adam Sandler rom-com. Physical comedy, improvised jokes, and emotional sincerity beneath humor. And finally, emotional messages. The film says you can pretend to be someone else to attract people, but real happiness only comes when someone loves the real you. And if you want, I can also explain psychological meaning of Danny's fake marriage habit. Why Palmer was never the right choice, and full psychological profile of Danny's hidden emotional layers between Danny and Catherine. Just tell me which one you want, and now Psychological meaning of Danny's fake marriage habit, from just to just go with it. Danny Amakabe's habit of wearing a fake wedding ring is not just a funny trick, it's a psychological defense mechanism. Sorry guys, sorry from my side. Let's break it down deeply. Organ trauma, from betrayal. On his wedding day, Danny discovers his fiancé never truly loved him, and she wanted to future money and status. This is happening in everywhere, in every country. Girls only marry with girls want money and the status, not the inside of boy's mind is truly. She is not watching as a human from inside. She only wants money, fame, and the status. So I'm talk to you, everyone, you boys, go and earn money and earn girl. That moment creates emotional humiliation. And that's things also need from my sides, and let's see what happen in the future. And loss of trust, fear of being valued only for success, and this is narcissistic injury, not narcissism in the ego sense, but deep down to self-worth. His brain makes a rule: if I show my real self, I get hurt. The wedding ring is equal to emotional armor. The fake ring becomes a symbolic protection, and psychologically it serves three purposes. Avoids rejection. If women think he is married, they don't expect a commitment. So no emotional vulnerability, no risk of abandonment, no deep attachment, and he controls the game. And reverses power dynamic. Before he was the one desperate for love, and now women pursue him despite him being unavailable. This gives him a psychological control. It repairs his damaged ego, prevents real intimacy, and by pretending to be trapped in a bad marriage, he gains sympathy, justifies casual, avoids responsibility, and but subconsciously he is saying, if love is fake, I will make relationships fake and attachment style. Danny shows signs of avoidant attachment traits and charismatic but emotionally distant, uses humor to deflect vulnerability and keeps relationships shallow and avoidant. People often and fear dependence, fear being emotionally exposed, and quiet love with physical pain. And the ring is not manipulations alone; it's avoidance. Okay, success as compensation. Danny became rich, attractive, and confident. But that's also compensations. Instead of feeling betrayal, he built a status, built image, built a persona, and just wait for a second, guys. I'm just switched up my light and now I think better. Just one is coming from backside. Yeah, internally he stayed the same insecure groom from 20 years ago. Why Katrina breaks the pattern? Catherine knows the real Danny and before money mattered, before the fake ring trick with her, he doesn't need performance yet, he doesn't need sympathy, he doesn't need control. She sees through him and still stays. This scares him because real love means no mask, no safety net, no manipulations. The ring is a symbol, and at the start, the ring represents trauma and deceptions. At the end, a real ring represents vulnerability and growth. He moves from I fake commitment to avoid pain to I accept commitment despite risks. That's psychological maturity. Final psychological truth is Danny didn't fear a marriage. He feared being unseen, being used, and being rejected again. And the fake wedding ring was never about two men. It was about protecting a wounded self-esteem. And if you want next, I can explain why Palmer triggered to his ego, but not his heart. And the psychological chemistry between Danny and Catherine, and Danny's full personality profile. Uh, and why the kids are symbolically important. So just for a wait couple of seconds. The psychological chemistry between Danny and Catherine, from Just Go With It. And Danny and Catherine's connection is not based on fantasy. It's not based on fantasy, it's based on emotional safety, and that's why it slowly becomes deeper than his attractions to Palmer. And let's break it down psychologically. Shared history is equal to emotional foundation. Catherine has known Danny for years, and she has seen his ego, his insecurity, his manipulations, his loneliness, and she is not impressed by his money or status. Psychologically, this creates secure attachment energy. With her, Dennis doesn't perform, and with Palmer, he performs constantly, and the difference is everything. No mask needed with Palmer, he exaggerates, he lies, he tries to look younger and cooler, and with Catherine, he argues naturally, he jokes comfortably, he relaxes, and real chemistry is not butterflies. Its nervous system calm, and Catherine regulates even emotionally. Banter as intimacy. Their sarcastic back and forth is actually emotional closeness. Playful teasing often signals and mutual trust, emotional familiarity, psychological safety, and they communicate effortlessly. That's long term compatibility. The family dynamic when Danny interacts with Catherine's kids, something shifts. He doesn't just feel attraction, he feels belonging, and Catherine represents stability, real life imperfections, and responsibility. Palmer represents fantasy, youth, ego validations, and Danny that slowly chooses stability over fantasy. The moment of emotional awakening. On the beach in Hawaii, there's a subtle turning point. Then he starts seeing Catherine is not as an assistant helping my life, but as the woman who truly knows me. Attraction depends when admiration appears, and he begins respecting her strength and humor and independence. That respect transforms into love. Why it took him so long, and Danny was emotionally stuck at the moment of his wedding trauma, and Catherine was always safe. And but sometimes safe feels less exciting than fantasy, and only when fantasy collapses does clarity appears. And he needed contrast, Palmer to recognize value, and Catherine. Emotional complementarity, Danny evident and ego protective, fearful of vulnerability, and Catherine grounded, direct, emotionally mature. She balances him and not with drama but with steadiness, and that sustainable love. Sustainable. Core psychological truth, Danny and Catherine work because they don't need illusions. Their chemistry is built on a shared struggle, mutual respect, and emotional honesty. And real intimacy feels calm, not chaotic. And then he finally chooses calm. And if you want deeper next, I can explain a full psychological profile of Danny. Why Palmer was necessary for his growth and symbolism of the kids in the story, and whether their marriage would realistically last. And tell me which direction you want to go. And full psychological profile of Danny McCabe, and from just go with it. And Danny is not just a funny, charming plastic surgeon, psychological. He is a man saved by early humiliations and hiding vulnerability behind humor and control. Let's analyze him layer by layer. Core wound, rejections, and conditional love. On his wedding day, Danny discovers his fiancée fiancée values him for future income, status, security, not for who he is. This creates a deep internal belief. Love is conditional. I'm not enough on my own. That belief becomes the foundation of his adult personality. defense mechanism. Danny builds psychological defense to avoid our feelings and that humiliations against. A humor as a shield, and he constantly jokes, flirts, and exaggerates. Humor protects him from serious emotional exposure, and if things get too real, he deflects. Strategic deceptions and the fake wedding ring is a control strategy. By pretending to be married, and he avoids commitment pressure. He avoids vulnerability, and he avoids being evaluated seriously. He turns intimacy into a game and status compensations, and he becomes wealthy, successful, attractive, and this overachievement compensates for his earlier rejections. It's subconscious revenge against his past. Attachment style avoidant, and then he shows traits of avoidant attachment. Enjoys closeness but fears dependency, withdraws when emotions get serious, and prefers casual relationships. Feels safer when he has control. And avoidant individuals often and crave love and but distrust it simultaneously. The internal contradictions defines Danny. Ego versus true self. Ego versus true self. Just wait for a couple of seconds, and there are two Dannys. Surface Danny, confident, smooth, in control, and emotionally detached. Inner Danny, insecure, afraid of being used, and afraid of not being chosen. Still wounded from the wedding day, and his ego persona exists to protect the inner insecure self. Fear of real intimacy. Danny doesn't fear women, and he fears and being sinfully, being emotionally dependent, and being abandoned again. And that's why Palmer works initially she represents fantasy, without depth, and Catherine is more dangerous. She sees him clearly and still accepts him, and that requires vulnerability which terrifies him. And turning point, emotional maturity, and in Hawaii, something shifts, and any experiences belonging with Catherine's kids. Uh, respects of respects for Catherine, emotional safety without pretending, and he realizes control doesn't equal happiness. Choosing Catherine means dropping the mask, letting go of manipulations, and risking real heartbreak. And that's growth, personality strength. And despite his flaws, and then he has strong traits, charismatics, generous, playful, protective, and capable to deep attachments, once safe. And his growth shows he is not emotionally broken, just guarded. Final psychological summary, and Danny begins as a wounded, avoidant man hiding behind charm, and he ends as a man willing to risk vulnerability for authentic love. And the fake ring symbolizes fear, and the real ring symbolizes courage. And if you want to go even deeper, we can explore what Danny relapse into old habit after marriage. Is Catherine emotionally healthier than him? Clinical level attachment analysis, long term marriage predictions. Tell me where you want to dive next. And so just wait for a second. Now let's talk about would Danny relapse into old habits after marriage? From just go with it, short answers, he could, but only under certain emotional conditions. And let's analyze this realistically. Personality pattern don't disappear overnight, and then he spends 20 years avoiding vulnerability using deceptions for control and seeking ego validations and keeping relationships shallow, and those are long-term coping mechanism. Marriage doesn't magically erase them. Under stress, people often revert to old patterns and what situations could trigger relapse. Then he might fall back into avoidant habits if and he feels criticized or unappreciated. His core wound is I am not valued for who I am. If Catherine criticizes him harshly, that old insecurity could activate, and his instinct deflect with humor, withdraw emotionally. He feels trapped and avoidant personalities, fear losing freedoms, and if marriage feels overly demanding, overly structured, and too serious, he might seek emotional escapes, not necessarily cheating but distancing, ego, temptation. He is wealthy, charming, and attractive. If women flirt and admire him, it could awaken the old ego repair habit, and not because doesn't love Catherine, but because validations once become his emotional drug. Why relapse is less likely with Catherine? Here's the important part. Catherine is emotionally grounded. She calls him out, doesn't idealize him, and doesn't depend on his status. That reduces the risk of ego inflations, and also Danny's growth in Hawaii was not impulsive. It came from realization and emotional clarity. And that suggests real maturity, not temporarily emotions. The big protective factor secure attachments with Catherine. Danny experiences stability, belonging, authentic acceptance. If she maintains open communications, his avoidant defenses with weaken over time, and avoidant people improve most when paired with emotionally secure partners. Catherine fits that role, most realistic outcome and early years of marriage. Some emotional withdrawal during conflict and occasional reflections with humor and difficulty expressing vulnerability directly but not chronic deception. Why? Because he already experienced the cost of living falsely. The fake life exhausted him, and the final psychological verdict, uh, relapse risks and moderate under stretch and low under emotional safety, and Danny's transformation is believed because he didn't choose Catherine for fantasy, he chose her for stability, and when an avoidant person consciously chooses vulnerability, that's a strong sign of lasting change. If you want to go even deeper, we can explore what kind of husband Danny would realistically become. Whether Catherine could outgrow him emotionally, could Palmer have ever worked long term and psychologically future of their family dynamic? And tell me which directions you want next. So just wait for a couple of seconds. So now let's talk about on psychological future of their family dynamic. Uh, Psychological future of their family dynamic. From just go with it. Now this is where things get really interesting because Danny doesn't just marry Catherine. He marries into an already formed family system, and that changes everything. Let's analyze it realistically and deeply. And the stepfather dynamic. Danny enters as a charismatic adult, not a biological father. Initially, the fun guy, psychologically step parents, and integration has three stages. Stage one is idealizations. Kids enjoy him because he is playful, he is generous, and he is not strict. And this stage would be smooth for Danny. And the stage two boundary testing, and later the kids with taste, and does he actually has authority and will he stay long term? Can he handle responsibilities? And this is called critical stage. And if Danny avoids discipline to stay liked, problems grow. And if he steps into calm authority, stability forms. And Michael's the sons. Michael is manipulative, clever, opportunistic, and he mirrors Danny's earlier personality, using a strategy to get what he wants, and this creates two possibilities positive path. And any recognitions himself in Michael teaches him emotional honesty and breaks the cycle of manipulations. Negative path. Then he laughs it off, reinforces clever deceptions. Michael learns charm beats integrity. Danny's maturity determines which path wins. And Maggie, the daughter, Maggie is dramatic, emotional, sensitive, and she likely craves stability, emotional reassurance. And if Danny becomes emotionally present, she may form a strong attachment bond. And but if he becomes distant during stress, and she could internalize and man eventually withdraw. That could shape her future relationships. Catherine is emotional positions. Catherine is the emotional anchor. She, Catherine is the emotional anchor, and she has already been independent, built stability alone, and doesn't need rescuing. In marriage, she will watch carefully. Is Danny reliable under pressure? And if yes, trust depends. If he reverts to avoidance, he may emotionally detach to protect herself, and biggest risk is the family system. The major psychological tensions would be Danny's avoidant tendencies versus Catherine's need for consistent partnerships. If conflict arises about parenting decisions, financial priorities, and discipline styles, Danny might initially talk to diffuses and avoid serious conversations and delay hard decisions. And that could frustrate Catherine's most likely healthy outcome because Danny consciously choose this like mm, not accidentally drifted into it. His motivation is strong over time, and he becomes more emotionally secure, and the kids attached to him as a stable father figures, and Catherine feels supported rather than alone. And avoidant personalities often improve significantly when they feel safe and chosen. And Danny finally feels the students not used and that transformative. And long-term projections 10 years later, and if growth continues, then it becomes a playful but firm father. Oh. Michael matures with integrity rather than manipulations, and Maggie grows up with a healthy model of partnerships, and Catherine relaxes emotionally because she is not carrying everything alone, and growth stops. Emotional distance increases, and Catherine becomes mm, Catherine becomes over responsible again. Kids sense tension. Danny retreats into work and humor. Final psychological forecast probability of a stable family dynamic high, but depended on emotional communications, and the key variable is this: will Danny continue choosing vulnerability daily? Because marriage is not one big transformation, it's a repeated choice. And if you want, we can go even deeper into what kind of parenting styles Danny would develop, whether Catherine could subconsciously reset him later, and how their intimacy would evolve over years, and attachment styles of the kids in adulthood. Which direction should we explore next? So, mhm. So just wait for a couple of seconds, and now let's talk about John. How their intimacy would evolve over the years from just go with it. Intimacy is not static, especially for a couple like Danny and Catherine, whose relationships begins after years of friendship, sarcasm, and emotional difference. Let's project this realistically over time, and phase 1 is honeymoon with emotional relief, year 1 to 2. Early marriage would feel intense and warm because Danny finally stopped pretending. Catherine finally feels chosen. The secrecy and chows are gone, and psychologically, this stage is powerful because it's based on relief, not fantasy. Their intimacy here would be playful, passionate, and deeply affectionate, full of inside jokes, and but underneath that warmth, one questions quietly, exist? Can Danny stay emotionally open? Hug terms. Stress and reality years 3 to 5, and now real pressure appears. Parenting disagreements, work stress, routine, financial planning. And what is where intimacy either depends on weekends. Danny's risk, returning into humor during conflict. Avoiding hard emotionals over Jason's distracting himself with work, and Catherine's risk becoming overly responsible. Feelings she carries emotional weight alone, and if communications remains open, intimacy becomes deeper and more grounded. If not, emotional distance could slowly grow. Emotional versus physical intimacy. Early on, their psychological chemistry would be strong because it's built on long term emotional tensions. Finally released, they have already shared vulnerability, but long term physical intimacy depends on emotional safety, mutual appreciations, feeling valued, and if Danny continues expressing his appreciations verbally, which he must learn to do more directly, physical closeness stays healthy, and phase 3 is mature partnership, year 6 to 10, and if growth continues, something beautiful happens and their intimacy shifts from excitement to depth. Less about big romantic gestures, more about quiet loyalty, shared glances, mutual respect, and emotional teamwork. Danny becomes less avoidant, and Catherine becomes less grounded. Their bond becomes secure rather than reactive, and that's real intimacy. The biggest long term threat, not cheating, not boredom, and the real threat is emotional avoidance during conflict. Avoidant personalities uh, don't explode, they slowly withdraw. If Catherine feels him pulling away repeatedly, resentment and could quietly build, and resentment kills intimacy more than arguments do. Best case scenario, Danny continues practicing vulnerability, and that means admitting fear instead of joking and saying I was wrong, and expressing appreciations regularly, engaging in serious discussions instead of dawdling them, and if he does that, their intimacy becomes stronger each year. Final psychological forecast. Their relationship has high long term potentials because it was not built on illusions and it was built on truth revealed slowly. And the difference between them succeeding or struggling is simple. Will Danny choose an emotionally courage consistently? If yes, their intimacy matures beautifully. If no, distance grows quietly. If you want to go deeper, we can explore would Catherine is ever resent Danny subconsciously and how the kids' adult relationships might look. And could Danny ever be a template to return to old ego habits? And so, clinical attachment style analysis of their marriage, and what do you want to next? Mm, so, here you can see would Catherine ever subconsciously resent Jenny? Short answer yes, it's possible, but it would depends on how Danny behaves after marriage. Let's break this down psychologically. Catherine's core personality. Catherine is emotionally strong, independent, used to handling life alone, and practical and grounded. She spends years as a single mother, Danny's assistant, the responsible adult, and just wait for it. She doesn't depend on fantasy, and that means the values consistency and reliability over charm. Where resentment could begin, resentment doesn't explode and it builds guilty when needs go unmet. Here are the realistical triggers. If she feels alone again, if Danny avoids hard conversations, retreats during stress, and lets her carry emotional labor, it could reactivate her old single mother survival mode, and her internal thought might become, I am still doing everything alone. That's the seed of resentment, and if he reverts to ego seeking behavior, it Danny craves admiration from the other women, prioritizes charms over responsibility, acts immature during serious issues, and she may feel I choose a partner, not another child, and that's dramatic and damage respect. And intimacy dies when respect weakens. Unspoken emotional inequality. Catherine risked vulnerability by marrying him. If she senses she loves deeper than he does, and she invests more emotionality, resentment can grow silently. Strong women often don't complain loudly. They emotionally withdraw instead. Why resentment is not inevitable? Here's the protective factor. Then he chose her consequently and he didn't settle. He realized that kind of awareness reduces long term regret. Also, Catherine is not passive. If something feels wrong, he will likely confront it directly. Uh, that prevents silence buildup. If Danny listens, there is a real psychological risk. The biggest danger is not betrayal, it's emotional asymmetry. And if Danny keeps evolving, resentments stays low. If we if he plateaus emotionally, Catherine may outgrow him psychologically. And when one partner grows faster than the others, distance forms, and most realistic outcome because their relationship started from friendships, not fantasy. They have strong communications foundations, and if they maintain honest conflict, shared parenting decisions, mutual appreciations, and resentment stays minimal. But if Danny avoids emotional depth repeatedly, Catherine could slowly becomes less affectionate, less open, more self-contained, and that would signal silent resentment and final psychological verdict. Probability of resentments moderate but preventable. The key variable is not love. It's emotional maturity over time, and Catherine doesn't need perfection. She needs a partnership. She needs partnership. Okay. If Danny remains emotionally present, Their marriage stagnates and if he slips into avoidance, she was not explored, she will definitely detach. And quiet detachment is far more dangerous than arguments. And if you want, we can now explore could Catherine outgrow Danny's intelligence emotionally? What kind of middle life crisis Danny might face? Adult relationships pattern of the kids and deep clinical attachments, style back breakdowns of what, where should we go next, and so now let's talk about Mhm. I hope you are enjoying this review of this movie, and so now let's talk about could Catherine eventually outgrow Danny emotionally? What do you think about? Short answer is yes, she could, but only if Danny stops growing. And this is the less about intelligence and more about emotional evolution speed. Let's examine it deeply. And Catherine starts ahead emotionally. Before marriage, Catherine already raised two kids alone and handled financial responsibility, managed emotional stress, and worked beside Danny without reading validations, and she developed emotional resilience through a real life pressure. Danny, in contrast, avoided commitment, used humor as defense, stayed emotionally guarded. So at baseline, she is slightly more even emotionally mature. Growth trajectories matters more than starting point. In relationships, the key question is not who is more mature, it's who keeps growing, and if Danny continues practicing vulnerability and taking parenting seriously, reflecting on his behavior, communicating during conflicts, and he closes the maturity gaps quietly. But if he becomes comfortable and stops evolving, the gap widens. Signs she might be outgrowing him. 1 year subtle indicators would appear, and she craves deeper emotional conversations. He deflects with jokes, and she seeks partnerships in stress. He avoids difficult discussions and she grows more introspective. He stays surface level, and if this pattern repeats, respect erosions begins. And emotional respect, if the foundations of long term desire. The danger is face quite emotional distance. If Catherine outgrows him, she likely wouldn't create drama. Instead, she would become more self content. She say less emotionally, lower expectations, and stop asking for depth. And that silent shift is dangerous. And because the relationships may look stable, but emotional intimacy would slowly fade. Why outgrowing is not inevitable. Danny has one powerful advantage, and he chooses her up to self-awareness and after self-awareness, and he didn't marry her blindly. He consciously recognized her value, and that kind of awakening often creates a long-term humility. If he remains humble, he keeps evolving. Most realistic long-term scenario, if they handle conflict openly, Catherine is doesn't outgrow him. Instead, they grow together. Danny becomes less avoidant, more emotionally articulate, more grounded, and Catherine becomes less guarded, more relaxed, more trusting. Growth becomes mutual, and the final psychological forecast probability of Catherine outgrowing Danny moderate if he stagnates, low if he stays emotionally intentional. The real issue is not love, it's emotional effort, consistency in long term marriage, and the partner who stops growing creates the distance. If Danny keeps choosing vulnerability, Catherine was not outgrow him, and if he returns to avoidance, he eventually will. She eventually will. And if we want to go even deeper, we can explore what kind of midlife Chris's dynamite realistically face and the kid's adult attachment styles. Whether attractions would increase or decrease over 20 years and a clinical level attachment breakdowns of both personalities. So, on which topic I am going to explain? Let's tell me. And mm, what are you thinking about this movie? What do you think on it? Let's tell us. And if you are loving this movie, then you can. I'm also loved this movie. I also watched this movie 3 to 4 times. And if you want to watch this movie, I will suggest you this movie. This is the greatest of all time. I already watched 3 to 4 times. And if you want to see this, then go into the theaters. Go in. You can see this on your PC. You can see this movie in your tablet, in your mobile phone. Whether you want to see, you can see. And mm, just wait for a couple of seconds. I hope you are loving this. If you are loving this, then like her video, subscribe our channel, and don't forget to press bell icon. And I will suggest you this movie. And if you want more from my side, I can just tell me the movie name. I can review this movie in our on our channel. Whatever you want. So just wait for a couple of more seconds to, and let's see what happens. And And you can see this movie with your friends, with your family members, and okay. And so now let's start. uh, Now I'm going to explain you. Just wait for a few seconds. And now I am going to explain you a clinical level attachment breakdown of both personalities, Danny and Catherine. Okay. Now we will analyze them using attachment theory, ball by Ainsworth framework. Secure, anxious, avoidant, and fearful avoidant pattern, and this will be deeper and more technical. Danny Makabe, dismissive, avoidant attachments, covert traits, high independence, emotional self reliances, and discomfort with vulnerability. Discomfort with vulnerability and use charm instead of depth. Development clue, his wedding day, betrayal reinforced, and internal working model. Intimacy equals humiliations. Even if he was not avoidant before, that trauma threatens avoidance. Behavioral markers in the film uses fake wedding ring and emotional distancing tools and prefers low commitment relationships, avoidant emotional confrontations, and deflects serious moments with humor. Comfortable with physical intimacy, uneasy with emotional exposure, and it is classic dismissive avoidant behavior. They suppress attachment needs rather than express. Internal conflict, avoidance often experience hidden desires for closeness, fear of dependency, and ego driven self protections. Danny doesn't lack feeling and he suppresses them to maintain control. And Catherine Murphy secure with slight anxious leaning. And Catherine presents primarily as secure attachment, but with mid-anxious undertones due to past stress, secure traits, and emotional is available. comfortable with vulnerability, communicates directly, and doesn't chase validations, capable of independence, and she doesn't need Danny. She chooses him that secure attachment strength and mid-engages leaning because he was a single mother and carried responsibility alone, worked under Danny for years, and there's a subtle risk of if I invest deeply, will I be left carrying everything? But she doesn't display clinginess or panic behavior, so she remains largely secure. And their attachment dynamic and this pairing is common. Avoidant Danny and secure Catherine. Secure partners can soften avoidant defenses over time, but only if the avoidant partner stays self aware. Emotional communication is practiced consistently. Risk pattern. If Danny regresses, avoidant response cycle, conflict arises and he withdraws emotionally. Catherine feels distance and she seeks clarifications. He deflects or minimizes. If repeated, even secure partners can develop anxious tendencies, growth pattern, and if Danny continues growth, conflicts arises and he stays present, expresses fear instead of deflecting, and Kathini responds calmly. Security depends and repeated secure responses can actually shift attachment style over years. Attachment is not fixed, it evolves. Long term clinical predictions, if healthy, Danny gradually moves towards earned secure attachment. Catherine remains secure, their bond becomes stable and resilient. If unhealthy, Danny remains dismissive, avoidant. Catherine slowly develops emotional fatigue, intimacy decreases, and final clinical assessment. Danny dismissive, avoidant, and potentials for earned secure. Catherine is secure, slight, anxious, risk under stress, and compatibility score psychologically high. If emotional accountability remains active, their relationships has a strong therapeutic potential because secure partners often they help avoidant individuals heal. If you want, next we can explore what therapy would look like for Danny and adult attachment style predictions for the kids. 20-year marriage psychological projections. Compare this couple to another famous movie couple, and psychologically, uh, where should we go next? And now we are going to 20-year marriage psychological projections from Just Go With It. Now we are looking long term, not honeymoon years, but 2 decades later. This is where real psychology shows up. We will break it into phases. And years 1 to 5 stabilization phase, main task integrating roles. Danny adjusts to being a full time father figure, and Catherine adjusts to not being the only responsible adult. They learn conflict pattern likely dynamic. Playful energy is still strong, and occasional tensions around discipline and emotional communications. Danny sometimes defaults to humor during serious discussions, and if handled well, this phase builds a secure attachment. If avoidant micro frustrations begin forming, year 6 to 10 identity and responsibility phases. Now kids grow older, careers peak, life becomes structured and repetitive. Danny's biggest psychological challenges here, midlife identity reflections, avoidant personality sometimes and feels restless when excitement decreases and routine increases, and if he handles the maturely, he depends a commitment, and if not, he may seek ego boost in attentions, admirations, distractions, and Catherine at this stage becomes more introspective and grounded. If she feels a partnership, she flourishes. If she feels alone, emotional fatigue may start in years 11 to 15, midlife crosswords, and this is the most critical psychological period, and common themes again awareness, psychological changes, and kids becoming independent, uh, existential questionings, and so the core truth is from these films, their marriage success depends less on love and more on Danny's continual emotional courage. So I hope you are loved the review from my side from this movie, and if you are loved, then like our video, subscribe our channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon. So let's meet in the next video. Thanks for watching. Goodbye everyone.